nice to see you again.
Very good of you to be here, and
Thanks for-
very good to be talking about one of our absolute favourite subjects. No, not me,
Yes.
and it's not you,
Yes.
it's beachfront.
It is beachfront. And what an enjoyable topic it is. And always a topic that's brought up, I must say.
Well, you're one of the few specialist purveyors, if that's the right word, of absolute beachfront.
Yes.
So if you're thinking absolute beachfront between Brighton, Aspendale, where you're at, and Portsea, I'm not sure that I know anybody that sold more absolute beachfront than you. Possibly there's been some higher prices in some other areas, but basically I believe you've probably sold the most absolute beachfront, or if not, you're certainly on the podium.
Yeah, well, look, it's probably getting up towards over $500 million now. That's over a 25 year span of what I call 9 kilometres of the most pristine beachfront property in Melbourne.
Yeah.
That's my belief and it's my understanding, and that's the belief of many that are trying to get on to that beachfront and lifestyle journey.
The usual. I'll start off with a couple of quick questions so we can get to know you a little bit better.
Of course.
So, how long have you been in the business? How long have you sort of been involved specifically in beachfront? I think you gave a little bit of an idea. And what sort of made you decide that you wanted to be selling beachfront?
Good question. I've been in real estate since I left school. I came from Beaumaris, went to Mentone Grammar, so I was always gravitated towards that area.
Yeah.
I had my own agency down the peninsula, and due to a partnership situation, I wanted to come back to the Beaumaris Mentone area. And then I sat down, I really thought about it, man. I thought, where do I want to work? And I just thought, I really want to specialise in something, as opposed to just generalise real estate. Doesn't mean I don't step out of the area, but 80 or 90% of my business is in the golden corridor, as I called it.
There's a lot of golden stuff, isn't there? There's golden mile, golden
I
corridor,
know.
golden triangle.
Yeah.
In fact, everything in real estate in Melbourne's golden something. Just about.
And then I just thought, I'm going to concentrate on this area, 2,000 homes approximately. And I thought, how am I going to build that up? And it wasn't easy at the start, Mel, because every agent wants to sell lifestyle or beachfront property.
The biggest job you've been involved dollar-wise and the most challenging?
The largest price sale thus far, and I will say thus far because it won't remain there for long, is 13.1 million.
Right.
Now, when you
I might have known something about that.
You did, Mel, and thank you for your contribution.
That's
there,
all right.
because I think you represented your client very well, and I think you represented my vendor very well. The most challenging sale is generally quite often blocks of land. I've got a block of land at the moment, 65 Nepean Highway in Aspendale, like a lovely block of land. It has been subdivided, so it's got a little bit of a narrow frontage, even though it's in the most elite 900 square metres of coastline along there. But people are having difficulty having a vision of what they're going to put on it, because Mel, this block is 12.5 metres wide.
Right.
It's 840 square metres in size, however, with a battle axe driveway. But people aren't seeing the vision. Let's design a house to put on this block, and let's change our marketing. So we're shifting that around. So that's been a little bit of a difficulty. But the other difficulties, Mel, is when these upper prices are coming around, I'm having vendors ring me and say, well, you got that, you must be able to get that for that. Yeah. There's so many factors that come into beachfront. Like, is it away from beach boxes, life-saving clubs, car parks? Is it got views from both levels? Are you in walking distance to the main shopping villages? Are you in walking distance to transport, and so on and so forth?
Let's go into 73. So here's a property that, just talk openly and honestly, here's a property that was advertised 8 to 8.8 and with the desire to sell the property. That's the key. Correct. Now, when I went down and looked at that with the client, I'm going, yeah, I could see 8, I could see 9, I could see possibly 10. Now, there's no underquoting in the 8 to 8.8. It's going to be sold.
Yes.
So how does that go from 8 to 13? What actually happens?
Was it interesting, because they're very good clients of mine. Not that makes any difference to what transpired. But
so you've worked for them before?
Yeah, probably sold 70 or 80 properties for this family. Yep. Yeah, so there's been quite a few. Yep. And
they haven't got any relatives, have they? 70 or 80 properties, that sounds a reasonable job. You were trying to bring people from a big, wide area, and in fact you did bring people from a big, wide area.
I did.
And while some of the credit is to you, some of the credit is also to the actual area itself.
Yeah,
Aspendale is now starting to be seen as, well, if you want to live in Brighton, okay, great, but it's an extra 10 million. for the same block.
Yes.
And if you want to drive down to Portsea, it's also an extra 10 million, but it's also an extra drive down to Portsea. So if you'd like to stay closer to Melbourne and you'd like to have exactly the same feel that you could have, possibly on a more private beach anyway than Portsea is, and certainly a more private beach than Brighton, well, why wouldn't you consider Aspendale?
Well, it is considered that way now, Mel. Like when I was marketing 73, there's so many buyers coming from Brighton and Sorrento and Toorak and all these lovely locations.
Yeah.
And people that come to Aspendale Beach for the first time, Mel, and you probably thought it, and I certainly thought it when I went there for the first time. I thought, oh my God, where's this been all my life?
Correct. How do you get from 8 million to 13 million?
Good question. And so my reply to that obviously is that I didn't know how this campaign was going to go. I knew it was a solid campaign. I knew the photography was great. I knew everything about this campaign was, I couldn't have done anything more.
Yeah.
So we put it out there. So we were fishing. I always say you're always fishing.
Yes.
You know, we've got the bait. Who's going to come and bite that bait? So I just thought, oh, you know, I might get 5 or 10 people through in a 3-4 week period. I had 28 people through, Mel, fully qualified buyers, and people that were coming with huge pockets, like huge pockets.
Yeah.
And the one fellow that came in, and it was the underbidder, he came in, he said, I'm buying this place. And I've heard that before, and I really just sort of didn't wash it away. I just thought, okay, well, let's see how we go. And lo and behold, I had probably 3 or 4 offers around the $10 million mark.
Yep.
So we're already above the quote range.
Yes.
So this is
which, of course, you didn't have time to change, but you would have changed.
No, I would have changed. They're
only
suggesting around that price guide. Yeah. And then this fellow said, we'll offer $13 million. I signed it up. So I said to my vendor, I've got a signed offer. Went down and saw the vendor. Lo and behold, you come into the property. I think it was after I just had a meeting with the vendor, and I was very transparent at that stage. And I said, Mel, we've got an offer at 13
Transparent. You were jumping around like this. I was trying to say, what if you just won Tats Lotto or something along those lines? And you're giving me the impression that you probably had. And then you started to tell me some version of the truth, and I'm going, geez, I'd need to get some sort of evidence here. I mean, you're a very trustworthy guy, but we've gone from there to there.
I know, and that's a 30% increase.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and as I said to you, I had the contract, like it's normally done electronically, but it was done in a hard copy. And as I said to you, I had it sitting in that box. I said, Mel, you're more than happy to look at it. Yeah. You said, no, I'm comfortable the way it is. Yeah. And then you engage with your client, and they came up at 13.1, and I thought, well, this is going to start negotiations.
Yes.
So I go back to the party that offered 13 million, and they're a little bit offended that their offer, we're in this war, and they said, no, we're out.
So in fairness to my clients, they were really brave to do that, because basically that was really, really pushing them, and the logic that we sat down with, and I think that's a really good learning situation for future. Certainly in my business, when somebody comes in with a knockout bid, if you can if you can hold back on that pressure, if you can keep a level head when you're under extreme pressure, and actually go back and just tap them on the shoulder and go, mate, here's a little bit more. Yes. It is amazing how many times it does stop the other party, because they've actually done what they've done to really to give that knockout bid and to stop you. And if you can keep going, then not more often than not, but there's certainly a certain amount of times where people just they'll fold.
Well, it wouldn't have happened without you. So I do thank you for that.
That's
and
right.
I thank you on for as far as your clients are concerned. They bought a property that'll never come back.
It's the parties that decided. I think we used that. We were just talking a bit before. Apples with apples. Correct. There are no apples.
No.
So the apples, in fact, are the buyers. Yes. They're the ones that make the decision. And when you've got a very small amount of absolute beachfront, you can't compare it to other absolute beachfront. Or you certainly can't compare it to properties that are not absolute beachfront. The underbidder, actually, without being specific, the underbidder did go and buy another property very nearby at a significant up to there as well, which only really therefore justified the particular price on that was paid here.
Well, it did, Mel, and the property they bought, without going into specifics, was basically a block of land. It's a push-down house, and they're going to build some very substantial home on it. Yeah. And they paid $10 million for it. Yeah. And then there was another one in Ideal Avenue that recently sold for $10 million on a 539 square metre block.
Correct. So this is a 2,000 square metre block that was 13 paid, and now we've got a 500, a quarter the size.
Yes.
A quarter the size, and basically, well, we're in double digits. We're in the same double digits together.
Yeah. But if you look at Aspendale, Mel, not that they'll come up. They're all being purposely built houses. There's probably 10 to 14 houses that would exceed $10 million. They just won't come onto the market.
Yes. What are the various stages in beachfront? Let's be specific.
Okay, well, obviously you've got we'll talk about your Rosebud or your Rye areas or what have you. There's no real connect with the water. You've got the main road going down on the beach side, and you're set back. If you've got young kids or what have you, they're crossing busy roads. You're not stepping off tile onto sand.
Yes.
You're not sitting in your lounge room watching the kids play in the little pools of water out the front. So there's that nice connectivity.
Right, so we've got water glimpses. Yeah. We've got water views.
Yes.
And now we move down to the next sort of situation, which would be you're not right on the beach, but you can still see the water and you can still feel it and smell it and all that sort of stuff. So that's beachside, I would have thought then. And but that's still at a very different price range to absolute beachfront. Why is that?
It is, Mel, because you don't have that, you don't have that connectivity. Like you look at 73 Nepean Highway, you sold, we sold together, that's a private beach.
You sold and I bought, but keep going. That's right.
That's a private beach. Once again, you go look out on that balcony over night time or daytime, a 35, 40 degree day, you're lucky to see 5 people. Yeah. Why? Because they're all at the car parks, the beach boxes, the life-saving clubs, and no one can access that beach.
Yes.
There's no walkways down.
The reason we're going through this is because hopefully we'll give people a few ideas about how to actually value beachfront. Yes. So we've had the water, the general water sort of glimpses, then we've had the water views, then we've had the beachside, and then there's absolute beachfront. So there's 4 gradations of sort of values. Yes. And I think this is what I try and explain to people when they're doing, to go back to our saying before, apples with apples on beachfront. So the first thing they say is, how big is the land?
Yes.
How many square metres?
Yes.
Well, that works when you're out at Sackville Ward. That works when you're in Toorak. That works when you're off the beach, when you're at beachside.
Correct.
The size of the land does matter, but the size of the land doesn't really matter when you're on an absolute beachfront.
And you're right with the apples with apples, Mel, because I go into properties and I think I've got a fairly good gauge. And what I talk about is where I'm comfortable the market will gauge. Yeah. I don't talk about where I think we're going to end up, because I know we could end up substantially higher than what our initial conversation started off with. Yep. Because I've seen this happen for 20, 25 years. Like I look at properties, Mel, I sold 12 months, 2 years ago along there, and I think, God, that seems cheap. But you know what? I've been having that same conversation with myself for 20, 25 years.
You're a slow learner.
Apparently.
Yeah. The land size is irrelevant.
Correct.
It's about how much beach frontage to some extent. That would be the only measurement that I would be considering would be the beach frontage measurement. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah, the value runs across the beach,
correct,
not back from the beach.
Totally agree with you.
You look at one that you're looking at the moment, that's got a 23.5 metre frontage, almost unheard of.
Yep.
And every room in that property faces the water, whereas most properties, Mel, your living and kitchen faces the water, and then you've got your bedrooms and everything face out the back.
Yeah, price, property, position. Yeah. So first up position is really important,
yes,
and that's already been established by history more than anything else. So we've got Brighton beachfront, we've got Portsea beachfront, and then we've got, to use your thing, the golden, whatever it is, beachfronts in between from Aspendale to Carrum. So history will show a little bit there, excuse me, of what the position is worth, but position does matter.
Yes.
So that's one. The next part of the equation is the property, and that, let's say we split that into land and building.
Yes.
So we've established that when we're working through a value, we're looking at the land front. We're looking at the frontage to the beach more than anything else. We're not ignoring the land size, but it's not as significant as frontage to beach. So then the next thing we get into would be the building.
Yes.
So how do we go about thinking about values in building?
It's interesting because ask all the valuers that ring me up because they can't value them. Mel, for the simple fact there's no apples with apples because it's such an emotionally driven purchase. Like these purchases aren't driven on the value of the property, they're driven on the want.
Yes. It doesn't really matter what the building is. I mean, there is some value in the building if it's a sensational building, without any doubt. So the best way to be thinking a bit about it is, well, what would it cost you to bulldoze and put on what you want there? Now, that may be different from the other person that's really happy with that building. But so that can be as how long is a piece of string. So the property itself has value, but it's very hard to quantify it with people because everybody's going to have a different view, which then gets us down to price. In absolute beachfront, it is about the people involved in the deal.
Yes.
And it's very, very, if you're buying a single fronter in Albert Park, you'll go and look at the other 20 properties that have been single fronters that are sold in Albert Park, and they'll all be approximately 3 million if they're renovated and reasonable sizes and all that. They're going to be circle 3 million. That actually sets some sort of limit, but it doesn't happen like that on beachfront.
No, it doesn't. Like for 73, for example, will another property come up similar to that? No, it won't. So if you like buyers are very buyer specific, you know, but there's certain things you've got to let go, Mel, because they're not going to tick all the boxes.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to be in certain parts and you've got the man, you're not going to get the perfect house at all. You might get the perfect location, albeit that it's going to be very rare.
Yep.
And they're willing to pay for it.
Yep.
And that's why what promotes these deserved value. That's the thing with this type of real estate. It's not generic in nature. It's not generic in nature or in design. You know, if something comes up that's close to what you're searching for, I always say put both arms out there and embrace it and go for it.
And I think we'll bring in the valuers into the discussion here because, well, they can cause some issues.
They do.
They can cause some issues because basically they do have to compare apples with apples. And so while I don't feel sorry for valuers, and valuers don't feel sorry for agents, I have some understanding of why they've got to do what they've got to do because they have legal issues that they've got to deal with. They've also got potential lawsuit issues down the track, and so really they need to be able to prove their valuation on that particular property.
Yes.
But when you haven't got other apples to compare it with, what usually happens is that they don't want to be sued.
No.
They
put a lower value on it.
Correct. They don't want to be sued. They don't want their PI insurance to be going through the roof or something. They don't want to be in court.
Yeah,
so they place the value here. Now that presents issues to people that are borrowing money.
Absolutely.
Because the banks then are only going to lend a percentage of a far lesser amount. You can run into those sorts of problems, and they can be substantial.
Absolutely.
They can be substantial when you're paying there and the valuer says, well, I think it's worth here. And then you go, well, hold on, there's multiple people bidding at this level here. How can you still be saying it's there? Isn't that market value? And people look at you and go, well, no. And I'm going, well, what is the definition then of market value? So I'm missing something.
Well, that's a good comment too. But like, Mel, it doesn't matter whether it's 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 10 million. It's the same story with the valuers because there's just not enough inventory to gauge where the true value would be. And bearing in mind, this is not a bricks and land value. This is a want value, which is in the eyes of the buyers. As I say, they'll pay whatever they need to pay to secure that property.
Yep.
And hopefully the valuers will come along with them.
Then how is a buyer and a seller going to value the property? Now, value here, just let's get this straight. Value is different from price. Price is ultimately what happens. That's the price. That then becomes the valuation or the value for future. That's fine. But in this situation where you haven't reached price yet, you've got to make an assessment of how you value that property, what value you put on that property if you're the seller or if you're a buyer, and if there's multiple buyers. How would you go about putting a value on a property?
Well, it's a little bit different for me, Mel, and probably some other agents, because I'm so invested in that area, and whether I'm selling something or another agent selling it or what have you, I'm doing my homework exactly what's going on. I always say to vendors, I think I'm going to give you a comfortable level that I'm confident the buyers will engage, and obviously the competition will take it where it is. So I very rarely don't get too tied up in the value. I get more tied up in the process, and the process is that we want to deliver you a great service to get the best outcome. The market will determine obviously where that value is.
Yep. Basically what you're saying is similar to how we, well, it's not similar, it's the same, how we think. So you're going in, you would see a seller and you would say, well, there's been that sale, that sale, that sale, and this sale, this sale, this sale. I think your property feels like it probably fits somewhere into there.
Correct.
Well, that's what we call the totem pole valuation, and it's not technical, and no, you're not going to learn it in valuation school, and no, it's not the summation method, and it's not the comparable method, and it's not the capitalisation method, and that's why valuers run into problems, because it's none of those methods that they've learnt in school. It basically, and totem pole's just something we made up, by the way, but it is put all the properties that are absolute beachfront, nothing else, no other property is like it, put the absolute beachfront properties there like in some sort of order of price, well, sorry, in the order of price, and then start looking at frontage, house, land size to some extent, position, so those two other P's, and then start to work out. And you can say, well, it goes there, but then you look at those couple, and then you look at these couple, and you go, well, actually, it's probably a little bit higher there. So maybe that's where I see value. And then that gives you what we like to say, what we try and say to our clients, and you're saying exactly the same thing. It gives a base.
It does give a base.
It gives a yardstick, a base, whatever the right to sort of hook into and say, well, that's where I'm going to work my calculations off, is that particular number. And then from there, you actually need to deal with reality. So that's the theory part. And on the totem pole, you've got to there's your theory, there's your theoretical price. And from there, you then really do need to have an open mind, and that's why we always recommend, or we always say, this is you have a valuation range, not a valuation price. A valuation price is a legal thing. A price is determined by a number of people's valuation pegs of where they're at, and then from there, the price is determined by the process.
But I think this is where you come into play, Mel. You obviously represent vendors and both buyers, and you come with a bucket load of knowledge, and you're very informed, and I think that gives, whether you're a vendor or a purchaser, a lot of comfort. You're getting a hold of information that a normal buyer probably couldn't get. You're probably getting information a normal vendor probably couldn't get, and you're giving guidance.
So there's a number of buyers, and they're all at 8 million, for want of a better word. And why are they at 8 million? They're at 8 million because you told them to think about 8 million. So you've now got 6 buyers thinking about 8 million. How do you get them to 10 million, 12 million, 13 million? What is the process that can get them there?
The fortunate thing with the property that we've 73 referred to is that, as I said, they came with deep pockets, and they came with the want, they had the desire, and the money really wasn't in forefront of their decision making. It was that I want that property, how much do I have to pay for it, because I know I'm probably not going to get anything else, and that was the driving force of that property and many others.
So do you auction or private sale a beachfront property? Or expressions of interest?
It's an interesting one, that, Mel, because I like the auction process, because I like the fact is it's going to tell the vendor, it's going to tell the agent, it's going to tell the buyers where everybody sees the value. I like the transparency of it.
You and I both know that 73 Nepean Highway wouldn't have got 13 million at auction.
Correct.
So, because our client wouldn't have had time to think about it.
No.
And if they had gone bang there or something like that, or the people that went bang at 13 might have thought about going there and seen other people at 10, why do I need to do that? I'm just going to pay 10.5.
Well, I often think about that, Mel, because like as I said to you, I had 3 or 4 people around 10 mil. We'd gone to auction, it would have been on the market at 10 mil. And then if we've got only one other party at 13 mil, we're bringing that 13 mil back to 10 mil. So I'm always mindful of that as well, and that could happen. Whereas expressions of interest, I think it's a similar process, different label. You still got to put your terms and conditions in by a specific time. I find vendors aren't as comfortable with that process. because there's not enough transparency in it, because negotiations are really going behind closed doors.
Yes.
And buyers don't like it.
Yeah. And sellers don't like it some of the times too. But at the end of the day, it can bring an incredible result. How would the great Garry Donovan go about buying a beachfront property?
I would go to probably the most informed agent or advocate, because you need knowledge. Like, we're not talking small sums of money. We're talking about a lot of money. And I don't think the normal purchaser or normal vendor has access to the information you necessarily need. So I would personally do a lot of homework.
Yeah.
I really would. But I would be gauging who the best agent is in that area. I'd be talking to them and getting a little bit of an understanding of what's going on, as opposed to, I just arrive up at this property at Flinders, looks all good, I'll give you X amount of dollars and we're all done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I think many buyers won't do that.
Yep.
They want comfortability, that they're spending large sums of money, and they want to make sure that they've got given the right advice.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to finish. I think even when it's absolute beachfront and there's no limit on what you've got to pay sometimes, people still want to feel like they've got a good deal.
Absolutely.
They do.
Absolutely.
If people want to avail themselves of your services, give us your details.
Garry Donovan.
Yeah.
Phone number 0419 588 660. Email is Garry, Garry, .donovan@bellproperty.com.
If I was looking to sell a property down there, I'd certainly be having Garry on my absolute shortlist. And if we can help you buy a beachfront property at any stage, my name is Mal James from James Buy Sell, and my number is 0408 107 988, or Mal, MAL, @james.net.au. Right, it's been absolutely fantastic, Garry, talking about this. Thank you very much. We could go on for hours about beachfront. We could.